hear that, Lane?
I did think it polite to listen, sir.
I'm sorry about that, for your sake. I don't play accurately. Anyone can play accurately. But I play with wonderful expression. As far as the piano is concerned, sentiment is my forte. I keep science for life.
Yes, sir.
Speaking of the science of life, have you got the cucumber sandwiches cut for Lady Bracknell?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. By the way, Lane, I see from your book that on Thursday night, when Lord Shorman and Mr. Worthing were dining with me, 8 bottles of champagne are entered as having been consumed.
Yes, sir. 8 bottles and a pint.
Why is it that at a bachelor's establishment, the servants invariably drink the champagne? I ask merely for information.
I attribute it to superior quality of the wine, sir. I've noticed that in married households, the champagne is often of first-rate brand.
Good heavens, is marriage so demoralizing like that?
I believe it is a very pleasant state, sir. I've had very little experience of it myself. I have been married once, of a misunderstanding between myself and a young person.
I don't know that I'm much interested in your family life, Lane.
I don't find it very interesting myself either.
Very natural, I'm sure. Lane's views on marriage seem somewhat lax. Really, if the lower orders don't set a good example for us, then what on earth is the use of them? They seem as a class to have absolutely no sense of moral responsibility.
Mr. Ernest Worthing.
Ah, Ernest, my dear boy. What brings you up to town?
Oh, pleasure, pleasure. What brings one anywhere? Eating as usual, I see, Algie.
I believe it is customary in good society to have some slight refreshment at 5 o'clock. What have you been up to since last Thursday?
I've been in the country.
What on earth do you do there?
When one is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses other people. It is excessively boring.
And who are the people you amuse?
Oh, neighbors.
You've got nice neighbors in your part of Shropshire.
Perfectly horrid. Never speak to one of them.
How immensely you must amuse them. Shropshire is your county, is it not?
Eh, Shropshire? Yes, of course. Hello. Why all these cups? Why cucumber sandwiches? Why such reckless extravagance in one so young? Who is coming to tea?
Oh, merely Aunt Augusta and Gwendolyn.
How perfectly delightful.
Yes, that is all very well, but I'm afraid Aunt Augusta won't quite approve of your being here.
May I ask why?
My dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwendolyn is perfectly disgraceful. It is almost as bad as the way Gwendolyn flirts with you.
I'm in love with Gwendolyn. I've come up to town expressly to propose to her.
I thought you would come up for pleasure. I call that business.
Utterly unromantic you are.
There's nothing romantic about a proposal. It is very romantic to be in love, but there's nothing romantic about a definite proposal. Why, one may be accepted. One usually is, I believe, and then the excitement is all over. The very essence of romance is uncertainty. If ever I get married, I'll certainly try to forget the fact.
There's no doubt about that. The divorce court was specially invented for people whose memories are so curiously constituted.
Oh, there's no use speculating on the subject. Divorces are made in heaven. Hey, don't touch those. Those are ordered specially for Aunt Augusta.
But you've been eating them all the time.
That is quite a different matter. She is my aunt. Have some bread and butter. The bread and butter was ordered specially for Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn is entirely devoted to bread and butter.
And very good bread and butter it is too.
Well, my dear fellow, you need not eat as if you were going to eat at all. You behave as if you were married already, and I don't think you ever will be.
And why do you say that?
In the first place, girls never marry the men they flirt with. They don't see it right.
That is nonsense.
It isn't. It is what accounts for the extraordinary number of bachelors one sees around London all the time. In the second place, I don't give my consent.
Your consent?
Gwendolyn is my first cousin.
And before I give my consent, you will have to clear up the whole question of Cecily.
Cecily? Who on earth is Cecily? What do you mean, Algie, by Cecily? I don't know any Cecily.
Lane, bring me that cigarette case Mr. Worthing left here the last time he was in the smoking room.
Yes, sir.
Do you mean to say you've had my cigarette case all this time? I wish to goodness you'd let me know. I've been writing frantic letters to Scotland Yard about it. I was very nearly offering a large reward.
Well, I wish you would offer one. I'm more than usually hard up.
There's no use offering a reward now that the thing is found.
I think that is rather mean of you, Ernest.
But it makes no matter now, for now that I look at the inscription inside, I realize that the thing isn't yours after all.
Of course it's mine. You've seen me with it 100 times, and it's a very ungentlemanly thing to read what's written inside a private cigarette case.
Oh, it is absurd to have a hard and fast rule about what one should and shouldn't read. More than half of modern culture depends on what one shouldn't read.
I know that, but I don't propose to discuss modern culture. It isn't the sort of thing one discusses in private. I simply want my cigarette case back.
Yes, but this isn't your cigarette case. This cigarette case is a present from someone of the name of Cecily, and you said you didn't know anyone of the name.
If you want to know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
Your aunt?
Yes, charming old lady she is too. Lives at Tunbridge Wells. Just give it back to me, Algie.
Yes, but why does your aunt, who lives in Tunbridge Wells, call herself Little Cecily? From Little Cecily with her fondest love.
My dear boy, what on earth is there in that? Some aunts are tall, some aunts not tall. That is surely a matter that an aunt may be allowed to decide for herself. You seem to think that every aunt must be exactly like your aunt. That is absurd.
Yes, but why does your aunt call you her uncle? From Little Cecily, with her fondest love, to Uncle Jack. There's no objection, I admit, to an aunt being a small aunt, but why an aunt, no matter what her size may be, should call her own nephew her uncle? I can't quite make out. Besides, your name isn't Jack at all. It's Ernest.
It isn't Ernest, it's Jack.
You've always told me it was Ernest. You always respond to the name of Ernest. I've always known you as Ernest. You are the most earnest-looking person I've known. It is perfectly childish right now that you're telling me your name isn't Ernest. Here, it's on one of your cards. Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4, the Albany. I'll keep this if ever you attempt to deny it to me, or to Gwendolyn, or to anybody else.
But my name is Ernest in town and Jack in the country, and the cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Yes, but that does not account for the fact that your aunt who lives in Tunbridge Wells calls you her uncle. Come, old boy, you'd much better have the thing out at once.
Algie, you talk exactly as if you're a dentist. It is a very vulgar thing to talk like a dentist when one isn't a dentist. It produces a false impression.
Well, that is exactly what dentists always do. Now, why are you Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
Produce my cigarette case first.
I'll reveal to you the meaning of that incomparable expression as soon as you produce your explanation.
Produce my cigarette case first.
Here. Now produce your explanation and pray make it improbable.
I'll produce my explanation, but it may not be as improbable as you think it is. In fact, it's quite ordinary. Old Mr. Thomas Cardew adopted me when I was a little boy and made me in his will guardian to his granddaughter, Cecily Cardew. Cecily, who addresses me as uncle from motives of respect that you could not possibly appreciate, lives at my place in the country, under the charge of an admirable governess of his prison.
Where is that place in the country, by the way?
Oh, that is nothing to you, dear boy. You will never be invited. And I may tell you candidly that it's not in Shropshire.
I suspected that. I've Bunburyed all over Shropshire on 2 separate occasions.
Well, you see, I don't know whether you'll be able to understand my real motives. You're hardly serious now. When one is placed in the position of guardian, one must adopt a very high moral tone on all subjects. It's one's duty to do so. And as a high moral tone is not known to conduce much to one's health or one's happiness, in order to get up to town, I've always pretended of having a younger brother of the name of Ernest, who lives in the Albany and gets into the most dreadful scrapes. That, my dear boy, is the whole truth, pure and simple.
The truth is rarely pure and never simple. Modern life would be very tedious if it were either, and modern literature, complete impossibility.
That wouldn't be at all a bad thing.
Literary criticism is not your forte, my dear boy. You had much better not try it. You should leave that to the people who haven't been to a university. They do it so well in the daily papers. Besides, now that I know you to be a confirmed Bunburyist, I naturally want to know, why are you Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
What on earth do you mean?
You have invented a very useful younger brother, in order that you may be able to come to town as often as you like. I have invented an invaluable permanent invalid called Bunbury, in order that I may be able to go down to the country as often as I like. Bunbury is a dreadful invalid. For instance, if it wasn't for Bunbury's extraordinarily bad health, I wouldn't be able to dine with you tonight at Willis's, for really I've been engaged to Aunt Augusta for more than a week.
I haven't asked you to dine with me anywhere tonight.
Yes, I know. You are so careless about sending out invitations. It is so careless of you.
You had much better dine with your Aunt Augusta.
I intend to do nothing of the kind. In the first place, I dined with her on Monday, and once a week is more than enough to dine with one's own relations. In the second place, whenever I'm down there, they always treat me as a member of the family, and send me down with either no woman at all or 2. In the third place, I know exactly who she will place me next to. She will place me next to Mary Farquhar,
who always flirts with her own husband across the dinner table. It is not pleasant, indeed it is not even decent. And this sort of thing is enormously on the rise in London. The amount of women who flirt with their own husbands is perfectly scandalous. It is simply washing one's clean linen in public. Now, besides, now that I know you to be a confirmed Bunburyist, I naturally want to talk to you about the rules.
I'm not a Bunburyist at all. In fact, if Gwendolyn accepts me, I think I'll kill my brother. I think I'll kill him anyways. Cecily is a little too much interested in him. It's rather a bore, so I'm going to kill my brother, and I strongly advise you to do the same with your with your invalid friend with the absurd name.
Nothing will induce me to part with Mr. Bunbury, and if ever you get married, which seems to me extremely problematic, you're going to have a very difficult time without knowing him.
If I do marry Gwendolyn, and she is the only girl that I've ever seen that I would marry, I certainly won't want to know Bunbury.
Then your wife will. You don't seem to realize that in married life, 3 is company and 2 is none.
Dear boy, that is the theory that the corrupt French drama has been propounding for the last 50 years.
Yes, and that the happy English home is proved in half the time.
Oh, good heavens, don't try and be cynical. It's perfectly easy to be cynical.
It isn't easy to be anything nowadays. There's such a lot of beastly competition about. Ah, that must be Aunt Augusta and Gwendolyn. Only relatives or creditors ring in that Wagnerian manner. Now, if I get her out of the way for 10 minutes so that you may have an opportunity at proposing to Gwendolyn, may I dine with you tonight at Willis's?
I suppose so, if you want to.
Yes, but you must be serious about it. I hate people who are not serious about meals. It is so shallow of them.
Lady Bracknell and Miss Fairfax.
Good afternoon, dear Algernon. I trust you are behaving well.
I'm feeling very well, Aunt Augusta.
Those two are not quite the same thing. In fact, the two rarely go together.
Dear me, you are smart.
I am always smart. Am I not, Mr. Worthing?
You're quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, I hope I'm not bad. I intend to leave room for developments and develop in many directions.
I'm sorry if we are late, Algernon, for I was obliged to call on dear Lady Harbury. I hadn't been there since her poor husband's death. I'd never seen a woman so altered. She looks quite 20 years younger. And now I will have a cup of tea and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Certainly, Aunt Augusta.
Won't you come and sit here, Gwendolyn?
I'm quite comfortable where I am, Mamma.
Lane? Why are there no cucumber sandwiches? I ordered them specially for Aunt Augusta.
I went down to market this morning twice. There were no cucumbers.
No cucumbers.
No, not even for ready money.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I am greatly distressed, Aunt Augusta, for there were no cucumbers available, not even for ready money.
Well, it really makes no matter, Algernon, for I already had some crumpets with Lady Harbury, who seems to me to be living entirely for pleasure now.
I hear her hair has turned quite gold from grief.
It certainly has changed its colour, from what cause I, of course, cannot say. I've got quite a treat for tonight, dear Algernon. I'm going to send you down with Mary Farquhar. She's such a nice woman and so attentive to her husband. It's really delightful to watch.
I am afraid to say that I shall have to give up the pleasure of dining with you tonight after all.
I hope not, Algernon, for it would put my table completely out. Your uncle would have to dine upstairs. Fortunately, he's used to that.
It is a great bore, and I need hardly say a terrible disappointment, but I have just received a telegram to say that my friend, Mr. Bunbury, has fallen very ill. They seem to think I should be with him.
Well, it seems to me very strange that this Mr. Bunbury suffers from such curiously bad health.
Yes, poor Bunbury is a dreadful invalid.
It seems to me high time this Mr. Bunbury decided whether he was going to live or die. This shilly-shallying with the question is quite absurd. Nor do I in any way approve of modern sympathy with invalids. I consider it morbid. Health is the primary duty of life. I'm always telling that to your poor uncle, but he never seems to take any notice as far as improvements in his ailments go. I should be much obliged if you could ask this Mr. Bunbury from me to be kind enough to not have any relapse this Saturday, for I will be requiring you to arrange my music for me. It is my last reception, and one wants something that will encourage conversation, particularly at the end of the season, when everybody has practically said everything they've got to say, which in most cases is probably not much.
I'll speak to Mr. Bunbury if he is still conscious, and I think I can promise he'll be all right by Saturday. Of course, the music is a great difficulty. When one plays good music, people don't listen. When one plays bad music, people don't talk. But if you will come with me into the next room, I'll show you the program I've drawn out.
Thank you, Algernon. I'm sure that the music will be quite delightful after a few expurgations. French songs I cannot possibly allow. People always seem to think that they're improper and look shocked, which is vulgar, or laugh, which is worse. But German seems to me to be a thoroughly respectable language, and indeed I do believe it so. Gwendolyn, you will accompany me.
Certainly, Mamma.
Charming day it's been, Miss Fairfax.
Pray don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever anyone talks to me about the weather, I always feel quite certain that they mean something else.
I do mean something else.
Yes, I know. In fact, I'm never wrong.
And I'd like to take advantage of Lady Bracknell's temporary absence.
So I would advise you to do so. Mamma has a way of coming back suddenly into a room that I've often had to speak to her about.
Miss Fairfax, ever since I met you, I have admired you more than any other girl I've ever met. Ever since I met you.
Yes, and I often wish that in public, at any rate, you were more demonstrative of the fact. You see, Mr. Worthing, we live, as I hope you know, in an age of ideals. The fact is constantly being mentioned by the more expensive monthly magazines, and has even reached the provincial pulpits, so I'm told. And so, my ideal has always been to love someone of the name of Earnest. There's something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. Ever since Algernon told me he had a friend called Earnest, I knew I was destined to love you.
You really do love me, Gwendolyn.
Passionately.
Darling, you don't know how happy you've made me.
My own Earnest.
But that isn't to say that you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Earnest.
That is clearly a metaphysical speculation, and like most metaphysical speculations, it's very little reference at all to the actual facts of real life, as we know them.
Well, Gwendolyn, I must say that I don't much care for the name of Earnest. I don't think it suits me.
It suits you perfectly. It is a divine name. It has a music of its own. It produces vibrations.
Well, really, Gwendolyn, I must say that I think there are plenty of much other nice names out there. Take Jack, for example. Charming name.
Jack. Oh, there's very little music in the name Jack, if any at all indeed. It does not thrill, it produces no vibrations. Besides, Jack's a notorious domesticity for John, and I pity any woman married to a man called John. She would probably never experience the pleasure of a single moment's solitude. The only really safe name is Earnest.
Gwendolyn, I must get christened at once. I mean, you must get married at once. There's no time to be lost.
Married, Mr. Worthing.
Yes, you know I love you, Gwendolyn, and you have led me to believe that you're not entirely indifferent to me.
Yes, but you haven't proposed to me. The subject hasn't even been touched upon.
Well, may I propose to you now?
I think it an admirable idea, and to avoid any possible disappointment, I think it only fair to tell you quite frankly beforehand that I'm fully determined to accept you.
Gwendolyn.
Yes, Mr. Worthing, what have you got to say?
You know what I've got to say to you.
Yes, but you don't say it.
Gwendolyn, will you marry me?
Of course, darling! How long have you been about it? I'm afraid you haven't had much practice in proposing.
My own one, I've never loved anyone in the world but you.
Yes, but men often propose for practice. I know my brother Gerald does. All my girlfriends tell me so. What wonderfully blue eyes you have. They are quite blue. I hope you will always look at me just like that, especially when there are other people present.
Mr. Worthing drives certain semi-accomplished position. It is most indecorous.
I beg you to retire. Mamma, this is no place for you. Besides, Mr. Worthing had not quite finished with what he had to say.
Oh, finished with what, may I ask?
Mr. Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
Oh, you are nothing of the kind. When you are engaged, your father should meet him, or I will inform you of the fact. Engagement to become a young girl is a surprise, pleasant or unpleasant. It is hardly a matter she should be allowed to arrange for herself. And now I have some questions to put to you, Mr. Worthing. While I am making these inquiries, you, Gwendolyn, will wait for me in the carriage.
Mamma.
In the carriage, Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn, the carriage!
Yes, Mamma.
May be seated, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell, but I prefer to stand.
Well, I do feel obliged to tell you that you are not on my list of eligible young men. I share the same list as the Duchess of Bolton. We work together, in fact. However, I will be most prepared to put you down on that list, should your answers be what a really affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Well, yes, I must admit that I smoke.
Oh, I'm very glad to hear that. I've always been of the opinion that a man should always have an occupation of some sort. There are far too many idle men in London. How old are you?
29.
That is a very good age to be married at. I have also always been of the opinion that a man who desires to be married should know either everything or nothing. Which do you know?
I know nothing, Lady Bracknell.
Ah, wonderful. Ignorance is like a delicate, exotic flute. Touch it, and the bloom is gone. The whole theory of modern education is just radically unsound. Fortunately, in England at any rate, education produces no effect whatsoever. If it did, it would probably prove a very serious threat to the upper classes and result in violence in Grosvenor Square. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
In land or in investments?
In investments, chiefly.
Oh, well, that's wonderful. With the duties expected of one during one's lifetime and those exacted from one after one's death, land ceases to be a profit or a pleasure. It gives one position, but prevents one from keeping it. That's all that can be said about land.
I own a country house with some land, of course, attached to it, about 1,500 acres, but as far as I can see, the only people who make anything off it are the poachers.
A country house? How many bedrooms? Well, that point can really be cleared up afterwards. You have a townhouse, I hope?
Yes, I own a house in Belgrave Square, but it is let by the two Lady Blocks.
Lady Bloxham? I don't know her.
Oh, she goes about very little. She is a lady considerably advanced in years.
Well, nowadays I can hardly be an assured basis for respectability and character. What number Belgrave Square?
149.
That is the unfashionable side. I knew there had to be something, but that can soon be altered.
Do you mean the fashion or the side?
Both, if necessary. What are your qualities?
Well, I'm afraid I really have none. I'm a liberal unionist.
They count as Tories and they dine with us, or they come in the evening at any rate. Now, on to minor matters. Are your parents living?
I'm afraid I've lost both my parents.
To lose one parent, Mr. Worthing, may be regarded as a misfortune, but to lose both looks like carelessness. Who was your father? He was evidently a man of some wealth. Did he rise from what the radical papers call the purple of commerce? Or did he perhaps rise from the ranks of aristocracy?
Well, you see, Lady Bracknell, I said I had lost both my parents, but
I was found.
Ah,
Yes, Sir Thomas Cardew, a man of a kindly disposition, found me and gave me the name of Worthing, for he had a first-class ticket for Worthing in his pocket at the time. Worthing is a place in Sussex. It is a seaside resort.
and where did this charitable gentleman with a first-class ticket for a seaside resort find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag?
Yes, a fairly large black leather handbag with handles. A fairly ordinary handbag, in fact.
And in what locality did this Mr. Thomas or James or Cardew find this ordinary handbag?
In the dressing room at Victoria Station. It was given to him in the state for return.
The dressing room at Victoria Station?
Yes, the Brighton line.
The line is immaterial, Mr. Worthing. I must confess that I feel somewhat bewildered by what you just told me. To be born, or at any rate bred in a railway station, seems to me to show some contempt for the ordinary decencies of family life. It reminds one of one of the worst excesses of the French Revolution. And I presume that you know what that unfortunate move led to. As for the particular locality in which the handbag was found, a cloakroom at a railway station could really conceal some social indiscretion, and indeed, I do believe it has been used for that purpose long before now.
Well, what would you have me do, Lady Bracknell? I need hardly say I would do anything to ensure Gwendolyn's happiness.
I would strongly advise you to attempt to acquire some relations and make some definite effort to produce at least one parent of either sex before the season is quite over.
I don't see how I could possibly do that. I can produce the handbag at any time. It is in my dressing room at home. I really think that should satisfy you, Lady Bracknell.
Me, sir? What has it to do with me? You could hardly imagine that I, or Lord Bracknell, would allow our only daughter, a girl raised with the utmost care, to marry into a cloakroom and form an alliance with the parcel. Good morning, Mr. Worthing.
Good morning. pity's sake, Algy, don't play that ghastly tune. How idiotic you are.
Didn't it go off all right, old boy? You don't mean to say Gwendolyn refused you. I know it is a way she has. She is always refusing people. It is most ill-natured of her.
Gwendolyn is as right as a trivet. In her mind, we're engaged already. Her mother, on the other hand, is entirely unbearable. Never met such a gorgon. Not that I've ever met a gorgon. She's a monster without being met, which I think is rather unfair. I'm sorry, Algy, I shouldn't be talking about your relatives like this.
My dear boy, I love hearing my relations abused. It is the only thing that makes me put up with them. Relations are simply a tedious pack of people who haven't got the remotest instinct on how to live nor when to die.
That's absurd.
It isn't.
But I won't argue about it. You always like to argue about things.
That is what things were originally made for.
If I thought that, I'd shoot myself. You don't think Gwendolyn will become like her mother in about 150 years, do you?
All women become like their mothers. That's their tragedy. No man does. That's his.
Clever.
It's perfectly phrased, and quite as true as any observation in civilized life should be.
I'm sick to death of cleverness. There are so many clever people nowadays. You can't go anywhere without running into clever people. It has become an absolute public nuisance. I wish to goodness we had a few fools.
Well, we have.
What do they talk about? I'd quite like to meet them.
Fools. About the clever people, of course.
What fools?
By the way, did you tell Gwendolyn the truth about your being Earnest in town and Jack in the country?
Oh, my dear boy, the truth isn't the sort of thing you tell to a sweet, refined girl like that. What ideas you have about the way to behave to a woman?
The only way to behave to a woman is to make love to her if she is pretty, and to someone else if she is plain.
That is nonsense.
But what about your brother? What about the profligate Earnest?
Oh, I'd have gotten rid of him by the end of the week. I'll say he died in Paris of apoplexy. Lots of people die of apoplexy, don't they?
Yes, but it is hereditary. It is the sort of thing that runs in families. You'd much better say a severe chill.
And you're sure that a severe chill isn't hereditary?
Of course not.
Very well. My poor brother Ernest to be carried off in Paris by a severe chill. That gets rid of him.
Yes, but what about Miss Cardew? I thought you said that she was a little too much interested in him. Won't she feel his loss a great deal?
Cecily is not a silly romantic girl, I'm glad to say. She goes on long walks, has a capital appetite, and pays no attention at all to any of her lessons.
I would rather like to meet this Cecily.
I'll make very good care you never do. She's excessively pretty and only just 18.
Well, does Gwendolyn know that you have an excessively pretty ward who is only 18?
My boy, one doesn't blurt these things out to people. What ideas you have. Besides, I'm quite sure that Gwendolyn and Cecily are bound to be very good friends. Within half an hour, I'm sure they'll be calling each other sister.
Women only do that when they've called each other a lot of other things first. But, you know, it's almost 7. You'd much better get going if you want to catch a table at Willis's.
Oh, it always is nearly 7.
Well, I'm hungry.
I've never known you when you weren't.
Well, shall we go down to the theatre after dinner?
Oh no, I loathe listening.
Or shall we go down to the club?
Oh no, I hate talking.
Or shall we trot down round Empire around 10?
Oh no, I can't bear looking at things. It's so silly.
What shall we do then?
Nothing.
Nothing. Well, that seems like hard work. But I don't mind doing hard work if there's no definite object of any kind.
Miss Fairfax.
Algy, kindly turn your back. I have something very particular to say to Mr. Worthing.
Gwendolyn, I don't think that I can approve of this at all.
You always adopt a strictly immoral attitude towards life. You're not quite old enough to do that.
Dear Gwendolyn.
Ernest, I fear we shall never be married. From the look on Mamma's face, I fear we never shall. Parents nowadays pay little respect to what their children say to them. Whatever influence I had over Mamma, I lost at the age of 3. However, although she may prevent us from marrying, though I may marry someone else, and marry often, there's nothing that she can do that can alter my eternal devotion to you.
Darling.
Your romantic origin, as related to me by Mamma, with unpleasing comments, naturally stirred the deeper fibers of my nature. Your Christian name has an irresistible fascination. Your character is exquisite. Your town address the Albany I have. What's your address in the country?
The Manor House, Walton, Hertfordshire.
And there's a good postal service, I suppose? The measures may be desperate. That, of course, will require serious consideration. I will write to you daily.
My own one.
How much longer are you in town?
Till Monday.
Good. Algy, you may turn around now.
Thanks, I've turned round already.
You may also ring the bell.
You let me see you out, Miss Fairfax?
Certainly.
I will see Miss Fairfax out.
A glass of sherry, Lane.
Yes, sir.
Tomorrow, Lane, I'm going
Bunburying.
Yes, sir.
You can pack all my usual dress clothes. My Bunbury suits, my smoking jacket, all the usual clothes.
Yes, sir.
I hope tomorrow will be a good day, Lane.
It never is, sir.
Lane, you're a perfect pessimist.
I do my best to give satisfaction.
There's a sweet, refined girl. The only girl I've ever cared for in all my life. What are you so amused at?
I'm just a little anxious about Bunbury, that's all.
You'd much better watch out for your friend Bunbury. He might get you into a serious scrape one day.
Well, I love scrapes. They're the only things which are never serious.
That's nonsense. You never talk anything but nonsense.
Nobody ever does.
Cecily, surely such a utilitarian occupation as the watering of flowers is rather Moulton's duty than yours, especially at a moment when your intellectual pleasures await you. Your German grammar is on the table. Pray open it at page 15. We will repeat yesterday's lesson.
But I don't like German. It isn't at all a becoming language. I know perfectly well that I look quite plain after my German lesson.
Child, you know how anxious your guardian is. That should improve yourself in every way. He laid particular stress on your German when he was leaving for town the other day. Indeed, he always lays stress on your German when he is leaving for town.
Dear Uncle Jack is so very serious. Sometimes I think he is so serious he cannot speak quite well.
Your guardian enjoys the best of health, and his gravity of demeanour is especially to be commended on in one so comparatively young as he is. I know no one with a higher sense of duty and responsibility.
I suppose that is why Uncle Jack often looks a little bored when we three are together.
Cecily, I'm surprised at you. Mr. Worthing has many troubles in his life. Idle merriment or triviality would be out of place in his conversation. You must remember his constant anxiety about that unfortunate young man, his brother.
I wish Uncle Jack would allow that unfortunate young man, his brother, to come down here sometimes. We might have a good influence over him, Miss Prism. I know you certainly would. You know, geology and German and things of that kind influence a man very much.
I do not think that even I could produce any effect on a character that, according to his own brother's admission, is irretrievably weak and vacillating. Indeed, I'm not sure I would desire to reclaim him. I'm not in favour of this modern mania for turning bad people into good people at a moment's notice. As a man sows, so shall he reap. You must put away your diary, Cecily. I really don't see why you keep one at all.
I keep a diary in order to enter the wonderful secrets of my life. If I didn't write them down, I should probably forget all about them.
Memory, my dear Cecily, is the diary that we all carry about with us.
Yes, but it usually chronicles the things that have never happened and couldn't possibly have happened. I believe that memory is responsible for nearly all 3-volume novels that Maudie sends us.
Do not speak slightingly of the 3-volume novel, Cecily. I wrote one myself in earlier days.
Did you really, Miss Prism? How wonderfully clever you are. I hope it did not end happily. I don't like novels that end happily. They depress me so much.
The good ended happily, the bad unhappily. That is what fiction means.
Yes, it seems very unfair. And was your novel ever published?
Alas, no, unfortunately, the manuscript was abandoned. I use the word in the sense of lost or mislaid. To your work, child, these speculations are profitless.
But I see dear Dr. Chasuble coming up through the garden.
Dr. Chasuble, this is indeed a pleasure.
And how are we this morning? Miss Prism, you are, I trust, well.
Miss Prism has just been complaining of a slight headache. I think it would do her so much good to have a short stroll with you through the park, Dr. Chasuble.
Cecily, I have not mentioned anything about a headache.
Oh no, dear Miss Prism, I know that. I felt instinctively that you had a headache. Indeed, I was thinking of that, not my German lesson when Matthew came in.
Cecily, I hope you are not inattentive.
Oh, I'm afraid I am.
That is strange. Were I fortunate enough to be Miss Prism's pupil, I would hang upon her lips. Well, I said metaphorically, of course. My metaphor was drawn from bees. Where's Mr. Worthing? Not back from town yet, I suppose.
We do not look for him till Monday afternoon.
Ah, yes, he usually likes to spend his Sundays in London. He is not one of those whose sole aim in life is enjoyment, as by all accounts that unfortunate young man his brother seems to be. However, I must not disturb Egeria and her pupil any longer.
Egeria, my name is Letitia, Doctor.
Merely an illusion drawn from the pagan authors. I shall see you both no doubt at evensong.
I think, dear Doctor, that I will have a stroll with you. I find I have a headache, after all, and a walk might do it good.
With pleasure, Miss Prism, with pleasure. We might walk as far as the schools and back.
That would be delightful. Cecily, you will read your political economy in my absence. The chapter on the fall of the rupee you may omit. It is somewhat too sensational. Even these metallic problems have their melodramatic sides.
Horrid political economy, horrid geology, horrid German.
Mr. Ernest Worthing has just driven over from the station. He has brought his luggage with him.
Mr. Ernest Worthing, B40 Albany W. Uncle Jack's brother. Did you tell him that Mr. Worthing was in town?
Yes, miss. He seemed very much disappointed. I mentioned that you and Miss Prism were in the garden. He said he was anxious to speak to you privately for a moment.
Ask Mr. Ernest Worthing to come here, and I suppose you'll have to speak to the housekeeper about a room for him.
Yes, miss.
I've never met anyone truly wicked before. I feel rather frightened. I am so afraid he will look just like everyone else.
He does.
You're my little cousin Cecily, I'm sure.
Oh, I'm afraid you're under some strange mistake. I'm not little. In fact, I believe I am more than usually tall for my age. But I am your cousin Cecily. You, I see from your card, are Uncle Jack's brother. My cousin Ernest. My wicked cousin Ernest.
Oh, you mustn't think that I'm wicked. I'm not really wicked at all, Cecily.
If you are not, then you have certainly been deceiving us all in a very inexcusable manner. I hope you have not been leading a double life, pretending to be wicked and being really good all this time. That would be hypocrisy.
Oh, I suppose I have been rather reckless.
I'm glad to hear it.
In fact, I have been very bad in my own small way.
Oh, I don't know if you should be so proud of that, though I'm sure it was very pleasant.
It is much pleasanter being here with you.
I can't understand how you are here at all. Uncle Jack won't be back till Monday afternoon.
Oh, that is a great disappointment. I'm obliged to go up first thing Monday morning by train. I have a business appointment that I am anxious to miss.
Couldn't you miss it anywhere but in London?
No, the appointment is in London.
Well, I know, of course, how important it is not to keep a business engagement if one wishes to retain any sense of beauty in life. Still, I think you had better wait until Uncle Jack arrives. I know he wants to talk to you about your emigrating.
About my what?
Your emigrating. He's gone up to buy your outfit.
I certainly wouldn't let Jack buy my outfit. He has absolutely no taste in neckties.
So I don't think you'll be requiring neckties. He's sending you to Australia.
Australia? I'd sooner die.
Well, he said on Wednesday night at dinner that you would have to choose between this world, the next world, and Australia.
Well, the reports I've received of Australia and the next world are not particularly encouraging. This world is good enough for me, Cecily.
Yes, but are you good enough for it?
I'm afraid I'm not that. That's why I want you to reform me. You might want to make that your mission, if you don't mind, Cecily.
I'm afraid I have no time this afternoon.
Well, would you mind my reforming myself?
It's rather quixotic of you, but I think you had better try.
I will. I feel better already.
You're looking a little worse.
Well, that's because I'm hungry.
How thoughtless of me. I should have remembered that when one is going to lead an entirely new life, one requires regular and wholesome meals. Won't you come in?
Thank you. Might I have a buttonhole first? I never have any appetite until I have a buttonhole.
A Maréchal Neil?
No, I'd sooner have a pink rose.
Why?
Because you are like a pink rose, Cecily.
I don't think it can be right for you to say such things to me like that. Miss Prism never talks to me in such a way.
Then Miss Prism is a short-sighted old lady. Cecily, you are the prettiest girl I've ever seen.
Miss Prism says all good looks are a snare.
Well, they're a snare that every sensible man would like to get caught in.
Oh, I don't think I would like to catch a sensible man. I shouldn't know what to talk to him about.
You are too much alone, dear Dr. Chasper. You should get married. A misanthrope I can understand, a womanthrope never.
Believe me, I do not deserve so neologistic a phrase. The precept, as well as the practice of the primitive church, were distinctly against matrimony.
That is obviously the reason why the primitive church has not lasted up to the present day. And you do not seem to realize, dear Doctor, that by persistently remaining single, a man converts himself into a permanent public temptation.
But is a man not equally attractive when he is married?
No married man is ever attractive, except to his wife.
And I've been told often not even to her.
That depends on the intellectual sympathies of the woman. Maturity can be depended on. Ripeness can be trusted. Young women are green. I spoke horticulturally. My metaphor was drawn from fruits. But where is Cecily?
Oh, well, perhaps she followed us to the schools.
Mr. Worthing!
Mr. Worthing?
This is indeed a surprise. We did not expect you till Monday afternoon.
I've returned sooner than I expected. Dr. Chasuble, I hope you're well.
Oh, dear Mr. Worthing, I trust this garb of woe doesn't betoken some terrible calamity.
My brother.
More shameful debts and extravagance.
Still leading his life of pleasure.
Dead.
Oh. Your brother Earnest, dead.
Quite dead.
What a lesson for him. I trust he will profit by it.
Yes, my brother had many, many faults, but it is a sad, sad blow.
Yes, very sad indeed. Were you with them at the end?
No, he died abroad in Paris. I received a telegram from the manager of the Grand Hotel.
Well, was the cause of death mentioned?
A severe chill, it seems.
As a man sows, so let him reap.
Charity, Miss Prism, charity. I myself am peculiarly susceptible to drafts. Will the interment take place here?
No, he expressed a desire to be buried in Paris.
In Paris? Oh. I fear that hardly points to any serious state of mind at the last. You would no doubt wish me to make some slight allusion to this tragic domestic affliction next Sunday. You know, my sermon on the meaning of the manna in the wilderness can be adapted to almost any occasion, joyful or, as in the present case, distressing. I have preached at harvest celebrations, christenings, confirmations, on days of humiliation, and on festal days. The last time I performed it was at the cathedral as a charity sermon on behalf of the Society for the Prevention of Discontent among the Upper Orders. The bishop, who was present at the time, was much struck by many of the analogies I drew.
That reminds me, Dr. Chasuble, you mentioned christenings, I think. I mean, you are continually christening. I suppose you know how to do them.
It is, I regret to say, one of the rector's more constant duties in this parish. I've often spoken to the lower classes on the subject, but they don't seem to know what thrift is.
But is there any particular infant in whom you are interested in, Mr. Worthing? Your brother was unmarried, was he not?
Oh, yes.
Those who live entirely for pleasure usually are.
This christening is not for any child, my dear doctor. I'm quite fond of children. I'd like to be christened myself this afternoon, if that would be all right with you.
But surely, Mr. Worthing, you've been christened already.
I don't remember anything of it.
But have you any grave doubts on the subject?
I certainly intend to have, but I don't know if this was any inconvenience or if you think I'm a little too old.
Oh, no, not at all. The immersion and indeed sprinkling of adults is a perfectly canonical practice.
Immersion?
You need have no apprehensions. The sprinkling is indeed all that will be necessary, or indeed at least I think advisable.
I might trot around about 5 if that would suit you.
Perfectly, perfectly. In fact, I have 2 similar ceremonies to be performed at this time. A case of twins on one of the outlying cottages on one of your own estates. Poor Jenkins the carter, a most hard-working man.
Oh, I don't wish to be christened among other children. It's quite childish. Can I trot around about 5:30?
Admirably, admirably. And now, as I wish not to intrude into a house of sorrow any longer, I merely beg you not to be too bowed down by grief, Mr. Worthing. What seem to us bitter trials are often blessings in disguise.
This seems to me a blessing of an extremely obvious kind.
Uncle Jack, oh, I am pleased to see you back. But what horrid clothes you have on. Do go and change them.
Cecily!
My child, my child.
What is the matter, Uncle Jack? Do look happy. You look as if you had a toothache. And I've got such a surprise for you. Who do you think is in the dining room? Your brother! Your brother Ernest. He arrived about half an hour ago.
What nonsense. I haven't got a brother.
However badly he may have behaved to you in the past, he is still your brother. You couldn't be so heartless as to disown him. I will go tell him to come out. You will shake hands with him, won't you, Uncle Jack?
Well, these are joyful tidings.
After we had all been so resigned to his loss, his sudden return seems to be peculiarly distressing.
My brother in the dining room. I don't know what it all means. I think it's perfectly absurd. Good heavens!
Brother John, I have come down from town to tell you that I am sorry for all the trouble I've caused and that I intend to lead a better life in the future.
Uncle Jack, you're not going to refuse your own brother's hand.
Nothing will induce me to take his hand. I think his coming down here disgraceful. He knows perfectly well why.
Oh, do be nice, Uncle Jack. There's some good in everyone. Ernest has just been telling me about his poor invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury. Surely there must be much good in one who is kind to an invalid and leaves the pleasures of London if sit by a bed of pain.
He's been talking about Bunbury, has he?
Yes, he's told me all about poor Mr. Bunbury and his terrible state of health.
Well, I won't have him talking about Bunbury about anything else.
I admit the faults were all mine, but I find Brother John's coldness to me peculiarly painful. Especially since this is the first time I've come down to visit.
Uncle Jack, if you don't shake hands with Ernest, I will never forgive you.
Never forgive me?
Never, never, never.
And this is the last time I shall ever do it.
Oh, have you ever seen so perfect a reconciliation? I think it best we leave these two brothers alone.
Miss Cecily will come with us.
Certainly. My little task of reconciliation is over.
Yes, you have done a wonderful thing today, darling.
We must not be premature with our judgments.
I feel very happy.
Algy, you young scoundrel, you must get out of this place as soon as possible. I don't allow any Bunbury here.
I have put Mr. Ernest's things in the room next to your own, sir. I suppose that is all right.
What?
Mr. Ernest's luggage, sir. I have unpacked it and put it in the room next to your own.
His luggage?
Yes, sir. 3 portmanteaus, a dressing case, 2 hat boxes, and a large luncheon basket.
I'm afraid I can't stay more than a week.
What did the dark-hearted want, Merriman? Ernest has been suddenly called back to town on important business.
Yes, sir.
What a fearful liar you are, Jack. I haven't been called up to town at all.
Yes, you have.
I haven't heard anyone call me.
Your duty as a gentleman calls you back.
My duty as a gentleman has never interfered with my pleasures in the smallest degree.
I can quite understand that.
Well, Cecily is a darling.
I won't have you talking about Miss Cardew like that. I don't like it.
Well, I don't like your clothes. Why on earth don't you go up and change? You look perfectly ridiculous in them. You know, it is perfectly childish for you to be in deep mourning for a man who is actually staying in your house for a whole week as a guest. I call it grotesque.
But you certainly won't be staying there for a whole week or anything else. You've got to leave by the 4:05 train.
Well, I certainly won't leave you so long as you're in mourning. It would be most unfriendly. If I were in mourning, I suppose you should stay with me. I should think it very unkind if you didn't.
Well, will you go if I change my clothes?
Yes, if you're not too long. I've never seen anyone take so long to dress and with such little result.
Better than being always overdressed as you are.
If I'm occasionally a little overdressed, I make up for it by being constantly overeducated.
Your vanity is ridiculous. Your conduct an outrage, and your presence in my garden utterly absurd. However, you must leave by the 4:05 train, and I wish you well on your journey. This Bunbury, as you call it, has not been a great success for you.
I think it has been a great success. I'm in love with Cecily, and that is everything. But before I go, I really must make plans for another Bunbury. Where is she? Ah, there she is.
Oh, I merely came back to water the roses. I thought she was still with Uncle Jack.
No, he's gone to order the dog cart for me.
Oh, is he going to take you for a nice drive?
He's going to send me away.
Then have we got to part?
I'm afraid so. It's a very painful parting.
It is always painful to part with people whom one have known for a very brief space of time. The absence of old friends one can endure with equanimity, but even a momentary separation from anyone one has just been introduced to is almost unbearable.
Thank you.
The dog cart is at the door, sir.
It can wait, Merriman, for 5 minutes.
Yes, miss.
Cecily, I hope I shall not offend you if I say that you seem to me in every way to be the absolute visible personification of perfection.
I think your frankness does you great credit, Ernest. And if you'll allow me, I will copy your remarks into my diary.
Do you really keep a diary? May I read it?
Oh no, it is simply a young girl's record of her own thoughts and impressions,
and consequently meant for publication. When it appears in volume form, I hope you'll order a copy. But pray, Ernest, don't stop. I delight in taking down from dictation. I have just reached absolute perfection. You can go on. I'm quite ready for more. Oh, don't cough, Ernest. When one is dictating, one should speak fluently and not cough. Besides, I don't know how to spell a cough.
Cecily, ever since I've looked upon your wonderful and incomparable beauty, I've dared to love you wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly.
I don't think that you should tell me that you love me wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly. Hopelessly doesn't seem to make much sense, does it?
Cecily,
The dog cart is waiting, sir.
tell it to come round next week, same hour.
Yes, sir.
Uncle Jack would be very much annoyed if he knew that you were staying on until next week at the same hour.
I don't care about Jack. I don't care about anybody else in the world except for you. I love you, Cecily. You will marry me, won't you?
Well, of course, you silly boy. Why, we have been engaged for the last 3 months.
The last 3 months.
Yes, it will be exactly 3 months on Thursday.
But when did we actually become engaged?
Well, ever since Uncle Jack confessed to us that he had a younger brother who was very wicked and bad, you of course have formed the chief topic of conversation between myself and Miss Prism. And of course any man who is much talked about is always seen as very attractive. One feels there must be something in him after all. I dare say it was foolish of me, but I fell in love with you, Ernest.
Darling, and when was the engagement actually settled?
On the 14th of February last, worn out by your entire ignorance of my existence, I determined to end the matter one way or the other, and after a long struggle with myself, I accepted you under this dear old tree here. And the next day, I bought this little ring in your name, and this little bangle with the true lover's knot I promised you to always wear.
Did I give you this? It's extremely tasteful.
You've wonderfully good taste, Ernest. It is an excuse I give you for leading such a bad life. And this is the box in which I keep all your dear letters.
My letters? But, my dear, I've never written you any letters.
You need hardly remind me of the fact, Ernest. I remember only too well that I was forced to write your letters for you. I wrote them 3 times a week and sometimes oftener.
Oh, may I read them, Cecily?
Oh no, I couldn't possibly. They would make you far too conceited. But the 3 you wrote me after I broke off our engagement are so beautiful and so badly spelled that I can hardly read them now without crying.
But was our engagement ever broken off?
Of course it was, on the 22nd of last March. You can see the entry if you like. Today I broke off my engagement with Ernest. I feel it better to do so. The weather still continues charming.
But why on earth did you break it off, Cecily? What had I done? I had done nothing at all. I'm very hurt indeed to hear that you broke it off, especially since the weather was so charming.
It would hardly have been a really serious engagement if it hadn't been broken off at least once. But I forgave you before the wind was out.
What a perfect angel you are, Cecily.
You dear romantic boy. I hope your hair curls naturally, does it?
Yes, with a little help from others. You'll never break off our engagement again, Cecily?
Oh, I don't think I could now that I've actually met you. Besides, there is the small matter of your name.
Oh, my name, of course.
You mustn't laugh at me, darling, but it has always been a girlish dream of mine to love someone whose name was Earnest. There is something in that name that seems to inspire absolute confidence. I pity any poor married woman whose husband's name is not Earnest.
But you don't mean to say that you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Earnest.
But what name would you have?
Oh, any name you like. Algernon, for instance.
But I don't like the name of Algernon.
Oh, well, why not? It is not a bad name at all. In fact, it is a rather aristocratic name. Half of the chaps at the bankruptcy court are called Algernon. Seriously, couldn't you love me if my name was Algy?
I might respect you, I might admire your character, but I fear I should not be able to give you my undivided attention.
Your rector here is, I suppose, experienced in all the ceremonials of the church.
Oh yes, Dr. Chasuble is a most learned man. He has never written a single book, so you can imagine how much he knows.
I must see him at once at a most important christening. Meeting.
Oh,
Yes, I'll be back in half an hour.
well, considering that we have been engaged since February the 14th, and I've only just met you today for the first time. I think it rather hard that you should leave me for such a long period of time as half an hour. Couldn't you make it 20 minutes?
I'll be back in no time.
What an impetuous boy he is. I like his hair so much. I must enter his proposal into my diary.
A Miss Fairfax has just called to see Mr. Worthing for very important business, as Fairfax states.
Is it Mr. Worthing in his library?
Mr. Worthing went in the directory of the rectory some time ago.
Ask the lady to come out here. I'm sure Uncle Jack will be back soon, and you can bring tea.
Yes, miss.
Miss Fairfax, I suppose one of the many elderly women associated with Uncle Jack in some of his philanthropic work in London. I don't quite like women who are interested in philanthropic work. It seems so forward of them.
Miss Fairfax.
Pray let me introduce myself. My name is Cecily Cardew.
Cecily Cardew. What a very sweet name. I think I like you already. I'm feeling we are going to be great friends. My first impressions of people are never wrong.
How nice of you to like me so much after we have known each other for such a comparatively short time. Pray sit down.
I may call you Cecily, may I not?
With pleasure.
And you will call me Gwendolyn, won't you?
If you wish.
Then that's all quite settled, is it not?
I hope so.
Perhaps this might be a good opportunity for my explaining to you who I am. You've never heard of Lord Bracknell, I suppose?
I don't think so.
Papa, I'm glad to say, outside the family circle is entirely unknown. I think that is quite as it should be. The home seems to me to be the proper sphere for the man. Once a man begins to neglect his domestic duties, he becomes probably effeminate, and I don't like that. It makes men so very attractive. Mamma, whose views on education are remarkably strict, has brought me up to become extremely short-sighted. It is part of her system. So you don't mind my looking at you through my glasses, do you?
No, not at all, dear Gwendolyn. I am very fond of being looked at.
You are here on a short visit, I suppose?
Oh no, I live here.
Really? A female relative of advanced age resides here also?
Oh no, I have no mother, nor in fact any relation.
Indeed.
My dear guardian, with the assistance of Miss Prism, has the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
Yes, I'm Mr. Worthing's ward.
He never told me he had a ward. It becomes more interesting hourly. However, I'm not sure that this news inspires me with feelings of unmixed delight. I'm bound to state that now that I know you're Mr. Worthing's ward, I cannot help expressing a wish you were just a little older, not so very alluring in appearance. In fact, if I am to speak quite candidly...
Oh, pray do, Gwendolyn. I think that whenever one has anything unpleasant to say, one should always be quite candid.
Well, to speak with perfect candor, I wish you were fully 42 and more than usually plain for your age. Earnest is the soul of truth and honor. Disloyalty would be as impossible to him as deception. However, even men of the strongest possible moral character are susceptible to the physical charms of others. Modern, no less than ancient history supplies us with many most painful examples of what I refer to. If it were not so, in fact, history would be quite unreadable.
I beg your pardon, Gwendolyn, but did you say Earnest?
Yes?
Oh, but it is not Mr. Earnest Worthing who is my guardian. It is his brother, his elder brother.
He never told me he had a brother.
I'm sorry to say that they have not been on good terms for quite some time.
That explains it. Now that I think of it, men rarely mention their brother. The topic seems most unattractive to them. Cecily, you've lifted a load from my mind. I was growing most anxious. It would have been terrible if a cloud had come over a friendship like ours, but it not. Of course, you are quite sure it is not Mr. Earnest Worthing who is your guardian.
Quite sure. In fact, I am going to be his.
I beg your pardon. Dear Gwendolyn, there is no reason why I should make a secret of it to you. Our little county newspaper is sure to chronicle the back next week. Mr. Earnest Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
It is certainly very strange for Mr. Earnest Worthing and I are engaged to be married. The fact is sure to be chronicled in the paper on Saturday at the latest.
I'm afraid you're under some misconception, for Ernest proposed to me just 10 minutes ago.
It is certainly very strange, for he proposed to me yesterday afternoon at 5:30. If you'd care to verify the incident, pray do so. I always keep a diary. One should have something sensational to read on the train. I'm so sorry to disappoint dear Cecily, but it appears that I have the prior claim.
It would distress me more than I can tell you, dearest Gwendolyn, if caused you any mental or physical anguish, but I feel bound to point out that ever since Ernest proposed to you, he has clearly changed his mind.
Ernest has been attracted to a proposal of any kind. I shall take it upon myself to rescue him, and with a firm hand.
Whatever unfortunate entanglement my dear boy might have got himself into, I will surely never reproach him with the fact after we are married.
Do you allude to me, Miss Cardew, as an entanglement? You are presumptuous.
Do you suggest to me, Miss Fairfax, that I entrapped Ernest into an engagement? How dare you? This is no time to wear the shallow mask of manners. When I see a spade, I call it a spade.
I'm glad to say I've never seen a spade. It is clear our social spheres have been widely different.
Shall I lay the tea here as per usual, miss?
Yes, as usual.
Are there many interesting walks in the vicinity, Miss Cardew?
Yes, a great many. From one at the top of the hills, quite close, one can see 5 counties.
5 counties? I don't think I should like that. I hate crowds.
I suppose that is why you live in town, Miss Fairfax.
Quite a well-kept garden this is, Miss Cardew.
So glad you like it, Miss Fairfax.
I had no idea there were any flowers in the country.
Oh, flowers are as common here, Miss Fairfax, as people are in London.
I don't know how anybody manages to exist in the country, if anybody who is anybody does. The country always bores me to death.
Ah, I believe this is what the newspapers are calling agricultural depression, is it not? I believe the aristocracy are suffering from it a great deal at the present. It has become almost an epidemic amongst them, so I'm told. May I offer you some tea, Miss Fairfax?
Thank you. Detestable girl, but I require tea.
Sugar?
No, thank you. Sugar is not fashionable anymore.
Cake or bread and butter?
Bread and butter, please. Cake is rarely seen at the best houses nowadays. Miss Cardew, though I most distinctly asked for tea with no sugar and bread and butter, you have clearly given me the opposite. I'm known for the sweetness of my nature, but I warn you, you may go too far.
To save my poor, innocent, trusting boy from the machinations of any other girl, there are no lengths to which I would not go to.
On an occasion like this, it becomes more than a moral duty to speak one's mind. It becomes a pleasure.
It seems to me, Miss Fairfax, that I am trespassing on your valuable time. No doubt you have many other calls of a similar nature to make in the neighbourhood.
Ernest.
Dear Gwendolen.
Just a moment. Are you engaged to be married to this young lady?
Dear little Cecily, of course not. What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
I knew there must be some misunderstanding, Miss Fairfax.
Well, you see, the man whose arm is at present around your waist is my dear guardian, Mr. John Worthing.
I beg your pardon.
This is Uncle Jack.
Jack! Oh!
Here's Ernest.
My own one.
Just a minute, Ernest. Are you engaged to be married to this young lady here?
What young lady? Oh, good heavens, Gwendolen!
Yes, to good heavens, Gwendolen! I mean, to Gwendolen.
Of course not. What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you, you may.
I feel there is some slight error, for the gentleman who is currently embracing you is my cousin, Mr. Algernon Moncrief.
Algernon Moncrief! Oh!
Are you called Algernon?
I cannot deny it.
Is it true that your name is John?
I could deny it if I liked. I could deny anything if I liked.
My name certainly is John. It has been John for years.
It seems a gross deception has been practiced on both of us.
You will call me sister, will you not?
There's just one question I would like to be allowed to ask my guardian first.
An excellent idea. Mr. Worthing, where is your brother Ernest? We are both engaged to be married to your brother Ernest, so it is of some importance that we know where he is at present.
Gwendolen, Cecily, it is very painful for me to be forced to speak the truth. I have never been placed in such a position in my life, and I am quite inexperienced in the matter. But I may tell you frankly that I have no brother Ernest. I have no brother at all. I've never had a brother and don't have the smallest intention of ever having a brother in the future.
No brother at all.
None.
And you've never had a brother.
Not at all.
It is very clear that neither of us is engaged to be married anymore.
It is not a very pleasant position for a young girl to find herself in, is it?
Let us go into the house. They shall hardly come after us there.
Certainly, men are so cowardly, aren't they?
This ghastly state of things is what you call bunburying, I suppose.
Yes, and what a perfectly wonderful Bunbury it is. The most wonderful Bunbury I've ever been in.
I won't have you bunburying here.
Well, one has a right to Bunbury wherever one chooses. Every serious Bunburyist knows that.
Serious Bunburys, good heavens.
Well, one must be serious about something in life if one wants to have any amusement. What you are serious about, I haven't the slightest clue. About everything, I should fancy. You have such an absolutely trivial nature.
The only small satisfaction I have in this whole of this wretched business is that your friend Bunbury has quite exploded. You won't be able to run down to the country quite so often as you used to, and a very good thing too.
Your brother is a little off-color, isn't he? You won't be able to disappear to London quite so often as your wicked custom was, and not exactly a bad thing either.
As for your conduct towards Miss Cardew, I must say that your taking in a sweet innocent girl like that is quite inexcusable, to say nothing of the fact that she is my ward.
Well, I can see no possible defense for your deceiving a brilliant, clever, thoroughly experienced young lady like Miss Fairfax, to say nothing of the fact that she is my cousin.
I wanted to be engaged to Gwendolen, that's all. I love her.
Well, I simply wanted to be engaged to Cecily. I adore her.
There's certainly no chance of you marrying Miss Cardew.
Well, I don't think there is much likelihood, Jack, of you and Miss Fairfax being united.
That is no business of yours.
Well, if it was my business, I wouldn't talk about it.
How can you sit there, calmly eating muffins while we are in this horrible trouble I can't make out? You seem to me to be perfectly heartless.
Well, I can't eat muffins in an agitated state. Butter would probably get on my cuffs. Besides, one should always eat muffins quite calmly. It's the only way to eat muffins.
All in that greedy way.
Jack, I wish you would have some tea cake. I told you I don't like tea cake.
I suppose a man makes his own muffins in his own garden.
But you've just said it was perfectly heartless to eat muffins.
I said it was perfectly heartless for you under the circumstances. That is a very different thing.
That may be, but the muffins are the same.
Algy, I wish to goodness you would go.
There's still one muffin left. Besides, I don't ever go without my dinner. Only people like vegetarians go without their dinner. Besides, I've made arrangements with Dr. Chasuble to be christened at 6 o'clock.
The sooner you give up that nonsense, the better. I myself have made my own arrangements to be christened by Dr. Chasuble at 5:30, and I will naturally take the name of Earnest. Gwendolen would wish it. We can't both be christened Earnest. That would be absurd. Besides, I have a perfect right to be christened if I like. There's no evidence supporting that I have been christened, and I think it's perfectly likely that I never have been. You've been christened already.
Yes, but I haven't been christened in years.
But you have been christened. That's the important thing.
Quite so I know my constitution can stand it. But if you've never been christened, I find it rather dangerous that you're venturing upon it now. Why, you must not forget that someone very close to you was almost carried off in Paris this week by a severe chill.
You said yourself that a severe chill isn't hereditary.
It used to be, but I dare say it is now. It's making great improvements like that.
That is nonsense. You are always talking nonsense.
Well, I haven't quite finished eating my muffins yet.
But I hate tea cake.
Well, why do you serve up tea cake to your guests then? What ideas do you have for your hospitality?
Algy, I wish to goodness you would go. I don't want you here. Why don't you go?
I haven't quite finished.
The fact that they haven't come into the house yet seems to show that there's some sense of shame left.
They're eating muffins. That seems like repentance.
They don't even seem to be looking at us. Couldn't you cough?
But I haven't a cough.
They're looking at us. What effrontery.
They seem to be approaching. That's very forward of them.
Yes, but we shall not be the first to speak.
Certainly not. It is the only thing to do now.
This silence seems to produce a most unpleasant effect.
A most distasteful one.
Yes, but we shall not be the first to speak.
Certainly not.
Mr. Worthing, I have something very particular to say to you.
Gwendolen, your common sense is invaluable. Mr. Moncrief, kindly answer me the following question. Why did you pretend to be my guardian's brother?
In order that I might have a chance at meeting you.
That seems like that certainly seems like a most satisfactory answer, does it not?
Yes, dear, if you can believe him.
No, I don't, but that does not affect the wonderful beauty of his answer.
True. In matters of grave importance, style, not sincerity, is the vital thing. And you, Mr. Worthing, why did you tell me that your name was Earnest? Was it so that you could come up to town to see me as often as possible?
Can you doubt it, Miss Fairfax?
I have the gravest doubts upon the subject. However, I intend to crush them. This is not the time for German skepticism. Their reply seemed most satisfactory, especially Mr. Worthing's.
I am more than content with what Mr. Moncrief said. His voice alone seems to inspire one with absolute credulity.
Shall we forgive them?
Yes. I mean, no.
True. I've forgotten there are important principles at stake that one cannot surrender. Who shall tell them? The task is not an easy one.
Could we not both speak at the same time?
An excellent idea. I nearly always speak at the same time as other people. You shall take my lead. Your Christian names are still an insuperable barrier. That is all.
Our Christian names? Is that all? But we are going to get christened this afternoon.
For my sake, you are prepared to do this terrible thing.
I am.
To please me, you are ready to face this fearful ordeal.
I am.
How bizarre to talk of equality of the sexes. When men are concerned, they are infinitely beyond us in terms of self-sacrifice.
We are.
They have no... no, nothing about.
My own one.
Oh, Cecily.
Lady Bracknell! Gwendolyn, what does this mean?
Merely that I've engaged to be married to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Come here immediately and sit down. Hesitation of any kind is a sign of physical weakness in the young and mental decay in the old. Apprised, sir, my daughter's sudden flight by her trusty maid, whose confidence I purchased by means of a small coin. I followed her at once by luggage train. Her unhappy father is, I am glad to say, under the impression that she's attending a more than usually lengthy lecture at the University Extension Scheme on the influence of permanent income on thought. Indeed, I do not propose to undeceive him. I have never undeceived him on any subject. I would consider it wrong. But you must know that all communication between yourself and my daughter must cease immediately on this point, as on all points I am firm.
I'm engaged to Gwendolyn, Lady Bracknell.
You are nothing of the kind, sir. And now, as regards Algernon.
Yes, Aunt Augusta.
Is this the house in which your invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury, resides?
Bunbury? Oh, no, Bunbury doesn't live here. In fact, Bunbury's dead.
Dead? Well, his death must have been very sudden.
Oh, yes, I killed Bunbury this afternoon. I mean, this afternoon.
What did he die of?
Bunbury? Well, the doctors told Bunbury that he was unable to live, and so he died.
Mr. Bunbury seems to have great confidence in the opinion of physicians. I am glad, however, that he decided upon some definite course of action and acted under proper medical advice. And now that we are finally rid of this Mr. Bunbury, Mr. Worthing, who is the young person whose hand my nephew Algernon seems to be holding in what appears to be a peculiarly unnecessary manner?
That is Miss Cecily Cardew, my ward.
I'm engaged to be married to Miss Cardew, Aunt Augusta.
I beg your pardon?
Mr. Moncrief and I are engaged to be married, Lady Bracknell.
Well, I do not know if there's something particularly exciting in the air of this part of Hertfordshire, but the number of engagements that seem to go on are quite above the proper average that statistics have laid down for our guidance. I do not think that some preliminary inquiry on my part would be out of place. Mr. Worthing, is Miss Cardew at all connected with any of the larger railway stations in London? I merely desire information. Up until this morning, I did not know that there was anybody who could have the origin of a terminus.
Cecily is the granddaughter of Sir Thomas Cardew, of 149 Belgrave Square, Gervais Park, SW, Dorking, Surrey, and the Sporran, Fifeshire, NB.
Well, 3 addresses usually inspire confidence, even in tradesmen. But what proof have I of their authenticity?
I've carefully preserved the court guides of the period. They should be open to your inspection, Lady Bracknell.
I've known great errors in that publication.
Well, Miss Cardew's family solicitors are Messrs. Markby, and Markby.
Mark me, and mark me. A firm at the very highest position in their occupation. Indeed, I am told that one of the Mr. Markbys is often seen at dinner parties. So far, I am satisfied.
I've also preserved records of Miss Cardew's birth, baptism, vaccination, confirmation, whooping cough, and the measles, both the German and the English variety.
A life crowded with incident, perhaps too exciting for a young girl. I'm not in favor of premature experiences. When the time comes for our departure, we have not a moment to lose. As a matter of form, Mr. Worthing, I must ask you if Miss Cardew had any small fortune.
Oh, only about £130,000 in the funds, that is all. Good to have seen you, Lady Bracknell.
Mr. Worthing, £130,000 and in the funds. Well, it seems to me that Miss Cardew is a very attractive young lady now when you look at her. Very few women of our generation have any really solid qualities, any that grow with time. We live, I regret to say, in an age of surfaces. Come here, dear child. Well, your dress is sadly simple, and your hair looks as if nature might have left it. That can all be altered. A really excellent French maid can produce wonders in a very brief space of time. I remember recommending one to young Lady Lancing, and after a few months, her own husband did not recognize her.
And after 6 months, nobody recognized her.
Kindly turn around, dear. No, the side view is what I want. Well, just as I had suspected, there are distinct social possibilities in your profile. The chin a little higher, dear. Style is largely dependent on the way the chin is worn, and they are worn very high at present. Algernon?
Yes, Aunt Augusta.
There are distinct social possibilities in Miss Cardew's profile.
No, I don't care 2 pence about social possibilities. I love Miss Cardew.
Never speak disrespectfully of society, Algernon. Only people who can't get into it do that. Dear child, you must know that Algernon has nothing to show for himself except for his debts. But I have never been in favor of a mercenary marriage. Indeed, when I met Lord Bracknell, I had no fortune of any kind. But never for a moment did I think that that would stop me. I give my consent.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Cecily, you may kiss me.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
And you may address me as Aunt Augusta for the future.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Well, I do think that the wedding had better take place quite soon. I'm not in favor of a long engagement. They give people the time to really get to know one another, which I think is never advisable.
Excuse me, Lady Bracknell, for interrupting you, but I must say, as Miss Cardew's guardian, I do not give my consent.
Upon what grounds, may I ask? Algernon is an extremely eligible young man. He looks everything, but he has nothing, and what more could one desire?
But I must say, I don't approve at all of Algy's moral character. I suspect him of being untruthful.
Untruthful? My nephew Algernon? Impossible. He's an Oxonian.
I fear there can be no possible doubt about the matter, Lady Bracknell. This afternoon, during my temporary absence to London on an important question of romance, Algernon obtained admission to my home under the false pretense of being my brother. He just consumed, as I've just been informed by my butler, an entire pint bottle of my Perrier-Jouet Brut 89, a wine I was specially reserving for myself. Continuing his disgraceful deception, he succeeded in the course of the afternoon by alienating the affections of my only ward.
He subsequently staked tea and devoured every single muffin. And he did all of this while knowing that I have no brother, I've never had a brother, and don't have the smallest intention of ever having a brother in the future. I told him so myself yesterday afternoon.
Well, Mr. Worthing, after careful consideration, I have decided to entirely overlook my nephew's conduct towards you.
That's very kind of you, Lady Bracknell, but my decision on the matter is unalterable. I decline to give my consent.
Kindly come here, dear child. How old are you?
Well, I'm only really 18, but I always admit to 20 at evening parties.
You are quite right about making some slight alteration to your age. A woman should never be quite accurate about her age. It looks so calculating. 18 contributing to 20 at dinner parties. Well, it will not be long before you are of age, and therefore I do not think that your guardian's consent is quite necessary in this matter.
Excuse me, Lady Bracknell, for interrupting you once again, but according to her grandfather's will, Miss Cardew does not come of age until she is 35.
35? Well, that seems to me to be most attractive age. To my own knowledge, there are many women in London who have remained 35 of their own free will for a very long time. Lady Dumbleton is an instance on point. To my own knowledge, she has remained 35 since the year that she arrived in London at the age of 40. Many years ago now. Therefore, I do not see why Miss Cardew would be not even more attractive at the age you mentioned than she is at present. There would be a large accumulation of land.
Could you wait for me till I was 35, Algy?
Of course I could. You know I could, Cecily.
Yes, I felt it instinctively. But I couldn't wait all that time. I hate waiting even 5 minutes for anybody. It always makes me rather cross. I'm not very punctual myself, I know that. But I like punctuality in others, and waiting, even to be married, is quite out of the question.
Then what is to be done, Cecily?
I don't know, Mr. Moncrief.
Mr. Worthing, as Miss Cardew positively states, she cannot wait until she is 35. A statement, I think, reflects a rather impatient nature. But I would beg you to reconsider.
But Lady Bracknell, can't you see that the whole situation is entirely in your hands? The sooner you accept my engagement to Gwendolen, I will gladly allow your nephew to form an alliance with my ward.
You must know that what you propose is entirely out of the question.
Then a passionate celibacy is all that any of us can look forward to.
It is not the future that I propose to Gwendolen. Algernon, of course, can decide for himself. Gwendolen come, we have already missed 5, if not 6 trains. To miss any more would lead us to comment on the platform.
Everything is quite ready for the christenings.
The christenings? What christenings?
Well, both these gentlemen have expressed a desire to be christened this afternoon.
Well, the idea is grotesque and irreligious. Algernon, I forbid you to be christened. Your uncle will be most displeased if he were to hear of how you wasted your time and your money.
Am I to believe that there are to be no christenings at all this afternoon?
I don't think that as things are now, it would be of much use to either of us.
Oh, I'm grieved to hear such sentiments from you, Mr. Worthing. They say the views of the Anabaptists, views that I have completely refuted in 4 of my unpublished sermons. However, as your mood seems to be one peculiarly secular, I will return to the church at once. Indeed, I have just been told by the pew opener that Miss Prism has been waiting for me for the last hour and 3/4.
Miss Prism? Did I hear you mention Miss Prism?
Yes, I'm on my way to meet her now.
Pray allow me to detain you for a moment, for this matter may be of no small importance to Lord Bracknell or myself. Is this Miss Prism a female repellent aspect, remotely connected with education?
Yes, she is the most cultivated of ladies, and the very picture of respectability.
It is obviously the same person. May I ask what position she holds in your household?
I'm celibate, ma'am.
Miss Prism, Lady Bracknell, has been for the last 3 years Miss Cardew's esteemed governess and valued companion.
Despite of what I hear of her, I must see her at once. Allow her to be sent for.
She approaches. She is nigh.
I was told you expected me in the vestry, dear Canon. I've been waiting for you there for an hour and 3/4.
Prism. Come here, Prism! Prism, where is that baby? 28 years ago, Prism, you left Lord Bracknell's house number 104 Grosvenor Square in charge of a perambulator that contained a baby of the male sex, but you never returned. A few weeks later, through the extensive investigations of the Metropolitan Police, the perambulator was discovered, standing in a remote corner of Bayswater. But the baby was not inside. In its place, there was a 3-volume manuscript of more than usually revolting sentimentality. Listen, where is that baby?
Lady Bracknell, I admit with some shame that I do not know. I only wish I did. The plain facts of the case are these. On the morning of the day that you mentioned, a day that is forever branded in my memory, I had prepared, as usual, to take the baby out in its perambulator. I also had with me a somewhat old but capacious handbag in which I had intended to place the manuscript of a work of fiction that I had written during my few unoccupied hours. In a moment of mental abstraction, for which I can never forgive myself, I deposited the manuscript in the bassinet, and I placed the baby in the handbag.
But where did you deposit the handbag?
Do not ask me, Mr. Worthing.
This matter is of no small importance to me.
I left it in the cloakroom of one of the larger railway stations in London.
What railway station?
Victoria. The Brighton line.
Gwendolyn, I must retire to my room for a moment. You will wait for me here.
I will wait for you all my life.
Well, what does all this mean, Lady Bracknell?
I dare not even suspect. Families of high position, such occurrences are not supposed to happen.
Uncle Jack seems strangely agitated.
Yes. Your guardian has a very emotional nature.
What is all this unpleasantness? I wish it would stop. It sounds like an argument, and I despise arguments. They're always convincing.
It has stopped.
Right, but some conclusion.
The suspense is terrible. I hope it will last.
Miss Prism, is this the handbag of which you speak? Examine it carefully. More than one life's happiness relies on your answer.
It appears to be mine. Yes, here is the injury it received through the upsetting of a Gower Street omnibus. Here is a stain on the lining caused by the explosion of a temperance beverage, an issue that occurred at Leamington's. And here, on the lock, are my initials. I have forgotten in an extravagant mood I had them placed there. The bag is undoubtedly mine. I'm delighted to have it so unexpectedly restored to me. It's been a great inconvenience being without it all these years.
Miss Prism, more has been restored to you than just this handbag. I was the baby you placed in it.
You?
Yes, Mother!
Mr. Worthing, I'm unmarried!
Unmarried? Oh, I cannot deny that is a serious blow. But after all, who has the right to cast a stone against another? Cannot repentance wipe out an act of folly? How can there be one law for men, but another law for women? Mother, I forgive you.
Mr. Worthing, there is some error. There is the lady who can tell you who you really are.
Lady Bracknell, I hate to seem inquisitive, but could you kindly please inform me who I am?
You are the son of my poor sister, Mrs. Moncrief, and consequently, Algernon's elder brother.
Algy's elder brother? I always knew I had a brother. Cecily, how could you say I've never had a brother? Dr. Chasuble, my unfortunate brother. Miss Prism, my unfortunate brother. My unfortunate brother. Algy, you'd much better treat me with more respect in the future. You've never treated me like a brother in all your life.
Oh, I have not, I admit. However, I was out of practice.
My own one. But what own are you now that you're someone else? What is your Christian name?
Good heavens, I hadn't quite thought of that. I suppose your decision on the matter is unalterable.
I never change, except in my affections. What a noble nature you have, Gwendolyn.
Aunt Augusta, was I christened at the time of my disappearance?
Every luxury that money could buy was lavished on you by your fond and doting parents, including a christening.
So I was christened. And what Christian name was I given? Let me know the worst.
Well, being the eldest, you were naturally christened after your father.
Yes, but what was my father's Christian name?
Well, I cannot at present recall what the general's Christian name was, but I can assure you that he had one. He was a man of great eccentricity, but only in later years, and that could be attributed to the Indian climate and marriage and indigestion and things of that nature.
Algy, do you remember our father's Christian name?
My dear boy, we were never even on speaking terms. He died before I was a year old.
But I suppose his name would appear on the army list of the period.
The general was essentially a man of peace, but I can assure you that his name would appear in any military directory.
The army lists for the last 50 years are here. These delightful records should be my constant study. M. Generals. Mantzoukas. Micah. Oh, what ghastly names they have. Moncrief. Lieutenant 1840. Colonel, Colonel General. General 1869. Christian names. Ernest John. So my name is Earnest after all. I've always known it was Earnest. I mean, my name naturally is Earnest.
Well, yes, now I do remember that the General's Christian name was Earnest. I knew I had a particular reason for disliking the name.
I always knew you could have no other name.
Gwendolyn, it is a very painful thing for a man to find out that for his entire life he has been speaking nothing but the truth. Can you ever forgive me?
I can, for I feel that you're shortchanged.
My own one. Letitia!
Frederick, at last! My nephew, you are displaying signs of triviality.
On the contrary, Aunt Augusta, I have now realized the vital importance of being earnest.